Hi, I'm Art Kaplan. I run the Division of Medical Ethics at the New York University Grossman School of Medicine in New York City. Well, a lot of people have been wondering, should we take steps to increase the burden on those who get sick with COVID if they are not vaccinated? If they didn't take the proper precautions to protect themselves, got sick, wound up in a hospital in an ICU, consumed a lot of medical care, and whether they got better or didn't, certainly ran up a pretty good bill relative to the cost of hospitalization. Some countries are moving in this direction. Greece has said any person over 60 who winds up in a hospital is not going to get their bill paid for by government health insurance if they didn't vaccinate. So that's an example of trying to encourage vaccination, if you will, by threatening a pretty big bill. Other people have proposed in other contexts, let people who aren't vaccinated have to pay a higher copay, pay more for their insurance if it's determined that they have not gotten the complete set of vaccinations. In the case of the mRNA ones, 3 shots. So what's fair? What's equitable? I'm not in favor and don't agree with those who say, well, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come into the hospital, or you're going to get lower priority if you need to come into the hospital relative to those who did get vaccinated or who were there for other emergencies like a heart attack or a stroke or something. I think that healthcare can't be discriminating on the basis of just vaccination status as to who can come into the ER or the ICU and who can't. I do believe that we want to encourage vaccination. And so in some contexts, say transplants, where it makes sense to plan the procedure and know that if you're not vaccinated, the odds of you successfully keeping your transplant are very, very low because you're going to be immunosuppressed. And the virus, if you got it, would kill you and the organ. There it makes sense to say, okay, as a condition or eligibility to get transplanted, you've got to get all your vaccinations, including COVID, because you're going to become an immunosuppressed person at very high risk of losing the organ and maybe dying because of infectious disease. But not at the ER, not at the ICU. On the other hand, it's very common in health insurance to say to people, you're overweight, or you engage in risky behavior, you're going to pay more for your life insurance or your health insurance. Underwriting, as it's called, does that all the time. There's nothing, if you will, immoral or illegal about saying, in order to decide how much you're going to pay for private insurance, we're going to take a look at your risk profile. And if you will, if you're diabetic or have some other underlying condition, we're going to charge you more. That's just the way it is in terms of trying to get people to pay for their risks. And I think vaccination status could easily fall into that category of risk assessment. So at the end of the day, it's a tough call. I don't think you want to restrict access to emergency services, intensive care services, things that are life and death, just on the basis of vaccination status. I do think some procedures allow you to plan ahead, transplant, and there you may exclude somebody when it's not an emergency, not a crisis, but rather a planned elective procedure, and say, if you don't do this, you're not going to be eligible to get a transplant, even if it means your life. You just have to do it in order for the transplant to work. When it comes to money, particularly in the United States, private insurance does charge people more when they're at greater risk, both for health and for life and disability insurance as well. Copays tend to be a little trickier because if you have a flat copay, the poor get hit harder than the rich. That doesn't seem right. But if we could have, if you will, a scale or a gradient charging people more according to income, or if you will, the higher level, the better the insurance plan, the more the copay might be, then I think it might make some sense. At the end of the day, the reason we're using these financial incentives isn't really to recoup costs imposed by those with COVID using resources. What we're really trying to do is change behavior and say to people, You're going to cost us more. That's a reminder. Get vaccinated. So if that strategy really works, we can look to Greece and see how well it turns out, and to other countries like Germany and Britain, which are thinking about copays and financial penalties. Then I think we may have something we want to try. If it really doesn't move behavior, probably not worth doing. I'm Art Kaplan. I'm at the Division of Medical Ethics at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine. Thank you for watching.